because there are some people waiting on the YouTube and not on the Zoom. I think some people watching the live stream and then some people might join on the webinar.
Okay.
So we are currently.
Only people in the webinar can submit questions.
Yeah.
Okay. So should I tell? Yeah, I guess. Should I tell people? Wait, how do you get to the webinar? Is it just through the website, Blueprint, or is there like?
Sorry, can you say that again?
How do you get to the webinar? If
how do you get the webinar? Oh, you tell them to go go.hackmit.org/tech talk, and then they should bring them right here.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Yeah. Sure.
I just came from ADT practice, so I'm like all sweaty. Oh wait, was that recording?
It's fine. I think it's chill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, which dance are you doing?
Doing jopping.
Oh, that's cool.
Are you in a dance?
I missed the audition day.
Tragic.
It was a little sad, but it's all right. Yeah.
Maybe you have a lot of years
semester.
to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. On your web browser. So if you're watching this live on YouTube right now, if you want to join the webinar so you can ask Justin questions, he's a really cool guy. On your browser, you could go to go.hackmit.org/tech-talk, and then you could just join in. Yeah, so Justin, if you see the Q&A section, there's someone asked a question, and you can either claim it by saying answer live, or you could just type the answer.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. All right, cool. Well, anonymous attendee, the talk is going to be about metaverses. You'll see in like 5 minutes or whenever we start.
I'll just type it in stream again, just so people can know. Yeah, maybe we can get started around like 9:05, just to wait for people to funnel in a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, MIT time.
MIT time.
Also, the website looks really nice this year. I was looking at it earlier.
Marketing popped off. Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. I stole the background from my first slide. That's the only slide that looks nice.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Are you on your dorms right now? I'm in a random classroom at MIT. I hope nobody comes in, but it should be fine.
Yeah. I am not in my dorm. I am in McCormick, which shows the classroom.
It's just empty classroom. It's a picture of Einstein. Yeah.
Sean Knight on the YouTube live stream asked if you're single, Justin.
Bruh. No. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone, by the way. Or post-Valentine's Day. No, I can't tell you more about Blueprint Labs because I don't know what that is, but Tony probably can.
Blueprint Labs? I don't think there's a thing called Blueprint Labs. We have tech
talks. Is that not a thing?
We have workshops. I'm not sure what exactly Blueprint Labs will be. Also, if you ever want to ask a question and you don't want it to get buried in the chat, Justin has all the questions on the Q&A just to pop from if you want to make sure that a question gets answered. Yeah. If you're on a live stream, if you want to join and interact with Justin, go to hackmit.org/tech-talk and you'll be right here with us in the room.
Oh, I think it means Blueprint workshops. I don't know. I don't know anything about them either, but we can probably talk about them.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the information is on our website, blueprint.mit.org, and then there's all the tracks. I think there's workshops in all of them, and especially in Start Hacking. Actually, I think a lot of the workshops are going to be covered in the Learnathon if you want to come, but there will probably be different levels of workshops. Like Git is pretty fundamental for collaboration across coders. We'll probably have some sort of Git workshop / like Start Hacking workshop. If you're more advanced, there's probably going to be web development, game development workshops. It's all really cool stuff. Yeah, okay. So at 9:05, Justin, feel free to take it away whenever you want.
Okay, cool. All right, let me get my slides up. Also, if any of you guys do any workshops and one is taught by Jack Cook, tell him Justin said hi. I think he's teaching one of them, but I'm not sure. All right. Cool. Assuming everyone can see this. So yeah, welcome to my tech talk. And the tech talk will be about defining the metaverse. So I'm Justin, and the question is, what is the metaverse? And throughout this entire talk, feel free to chime in with questions on the Q&A section. I won't be looking at the chat most of the time, so use Q&A if you want to ask a question, and I can answer them live. If you're on the YouTube, hop on the webinar, go to hackmit.org/tech-talk. All right, so yeah, defining the metaverse. So a lot of you probably have heard the term metaverse somewhere, but there's probably a subset that have never heard this term before. And so this talk will be targeted towards both people, and I will try to get everyone kind of up to speed about what the metaverse is, because it's constantly changing. So you've probably heard a lot of different things in the news about the metaverse. There's a lot of conflicting, reports out there. And so that's why it can be really confusing, is because the metaverse is something that people are kind of defining as we go along. So there's a lot of things like YouTube videos about how you can become a metaverse millionaire, how metaverse companies are crashing, and like the 5 top metaverse stock to get rich in 2022. So a lot of misinformation or just like noise out there. So I want to help you guys sort through that. So first, so the structure of the talk, I'll give about like a 30-minute talk about the metaverse. And throughout the time, feel free to ask me questions. I want to basically define the metaverse for you, discuss some current issues with the metaverse, go a little bit into like the technical side, and then basically tell you why you should care about the metaverse. And at the very end, I'll just basically open it up to questions. And it could be questions about the talk I just gave. It could be questions about like a blueprint or anything coming up. Like it'll be an open Q&A session. So feel free to just spam your questions then. Yeah. So before I jump into what the metaverse is, I want to give a brief introduction to myself. So my name is Justin. I'm currently a senior studying EECS at MIT. That's electrical engineering and computer science. I was a HackMIT organizer. Now I'm old, so I'm retired. That's why I don't know what's going on during Blueprint as much. But I was the dev head when I was on HackMIT. And what that means is basically I headed the committee that wrote all of our software that we use to run a hackathon. So there's a lot of software that goes into running such a large event, such as HackMIT or Blueprint. And things like your registration platform or like your application reading system, things like that. And actually, if you're curious, we open source a lot of our software at code.hackmit.org. So I just want to plug that a little bit. There's also another reason I love Blueprint, and it's because I attended Blueprint 2017. And that's because I'm from the Boston area. And so actually, a lot of you might be from the Boston area. So I can say I'm from Winchester, and people might know where that is. But shout out to anyone attending this from Winchester. I think in 2017, I was probably like the only one from my school. But Blueprint 2017 really made me, helped inspire me to go to MIT and really dive into CS. Another thing is when I've been organizing hackathons for a while. So in high school, I founded a hackathon called MA Hacks. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because I want to give them a little bit of a shout out. I think MA Hacks 6 is coming up very soon, like in the next month or so. And I'm not involved in the organizing anymore because I'm old. But if you are interested, I think it's going to be a really cool event. I hope. But yeah, the 6th one is coming out like next month. So give them a look. I assume everyone here is interested in hackathons. That's why I mentioned it. And the last thing about me that is very relevant to this talk is I'm currently a full-time engineer at a startup called Gather. Some of you may have heard of it. A lot of you probably haven't. So we were started basically in the last year in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. And what Gather is a virtual platform where it kind of looks like Pokemon, but there's like a video chat component to it. And so you can basically have a character on Gather and you interact with other people. And there's a lot of use cases, for example, like large events and conferences, or what I work on, which is remote work. So I build features for offices that are hosted on Gather. And we have now like tens of thousands of offices that use Gather as our as their office space because they're like a remote company. And this is becoming a bigger and bigger trend coming up in the future. And the reason this is relevant to the talk today is because Gather is a metaverse company. And you will know hopefully what that means by the end of this talk. Cool. So let's get into the meat of it. What is the metaverse? So there's a lot of questions about what actually counts as the metaverse or what doesn't. And there's no definitive answer because it's similar to like the internet back in 1970 or blockchain back in like 2010, right? People are defining it as we go along, and as companies develop new technology related to the metaverse, the definition of the metaverse will change. And so there's kind of a discussion between like, is the metaverse VR based or web based or both? Centralized versus decentralized metaverses, which I'll talk about. Open versus closed protocol metaverses, and whether or not a metaverse should be hosted on the blockchain or it can just be hosted on traditional technologies. And basically, if you hear something like blank is the metaverse, it's kind of like saying Google is the internet. It's not completely false. It's just the Google is related to the internet. Similarly, it does not encompass everything to do with the metaverse because it's a very broad, metaverse is a very broad definition. So the easiest way to kind of define the metaverse for you guys is basically coming up with some characteristics about what the metaverse is. And so these are typical characteristics of metaverse companies. They're not a definitive list, and not every company has these elements in it, but they are what you find when people talk about the metaverse. These are some of the things they talk about. So the first important thing is a persistent virtual world. So imagine something like Minecraft, right? It's like a virtual world, but it's a game where you hop on and then you log off. And arguably nothing really happens necessarily when you log off. But what a persistent virtual world means, it's like you can log on and log off and things, the state of the virtual world persists, and things like keep happening even when you're not there. And it's because it's simulating a world, but just online. Usually there's some interaction between the physical world and the digital world. And so unlike, for example, Minecraft, where it's just a game and things that happen in there don't really leave, a lot of things that define what a metaverse company is that it will have some interaction with what's going on in the real world. And I'll go into a little bit more specific examples then. Another key characteristic is the transitioning of activities from the physical world into the virtual world. I think I saw somebody raise their hand, but if you have a question, feel free to just pop it in the Q&A section, and I'll click on it and answer it. So we're slowly transitioning a lot of things that we normally do in the physical world, for example, like holding socials, attending conferences, doing remote work. And we're transitioning them into the virtual world and having some kind of version online. Another key point is virtual identity. So this is one of the key points that that differentiates metaverse from just like the internet. Basically, in a metaverse platform, you have some kind of identity that's persistent. So I will have an avatar that I've customized that's kind of tied to me in some way that's more meaningful than just like my character online in Minecraft. So kind of like having this one identity that's tied to you is a key component of a lot of metaverse platforms. Some kind of virtual economy is also very common. So trading goods, spending money, and similarly, virtual possession and ownership. So being able to buy things, and those things are now tied to your virtual identity in a way that's deeper than like say buying a skin in the game. It's something that is somehow tied to your identity. So as I mentioned, some examples of metaverse use cases like remote work, virtual socials, open world games, and I'll go into more specific details. Cool. So I've listed a bunch of examples of metaverse companies, and you can see they're very different. So first, probably the one that most people will know out of the companies I'm about to list is Fortnite. Fortnite is currently not exactly a metaverse company, but it's really pushing to move in that direction, where they're trying to build this open world platform where it's no longer just a game. You kind of have this virtual identity online in Fortnite. And so we see a lot of metaverse companies coming out of games. The one on the right is a platform called Decentralized, and it is a decentralized virtual platform that's hosted on the blockchain. And this also goes into like the virtual identity piece, because if you don't know much about the blockchain, basically every user kind of has this unique hash, which is their unique ID, and everything that they do that's put on the blockchain can be verified and tied back to them. And that's kind of the key innovation for Decentraland, is that they host everything on the blockchain, and so you have this permanent identity that's tied to you. On the left, we have Gather, which is a platform less used for games and more for some like remote work or events. And it's a web platform or desktop app, basically using traditional web technologies. And then on the right is Facebook's version, which is called Horizon Worlds, I think. And for them, it's strictly a VR experience. Similarly, they use it for remote work and events, but it's specifically in the VR space. So I see a question from anonymous attendee. What do you believe the positive and negatives of the metaverse are? How do you think integrating the metaverse into our lives will impact us as humans? Yeah, that's a very important question to be thinking about. So personally, and I will get into more detail in the future slides, but personally, I think the metaverse has a net positive benefit in connecting people, basically allowing humans to do things across distances that we have not been able to do. Historically, everyone's limited by their locality. So everything is kind of based on what you can do. In terms of social interaction, everything's based around what you can do just in your local area. The pandemic really changed that, because we weren't able to get together. And I really see that the move towards Zoom and virtual platforms, the metaverse is really just an extension of that, making it like taking it further, basically. Yeah, it's a really good question though. So why are we even talking about the metaverse? I think this came up like just within the past 6 months. Metaverse has exploded to become this huge term, and there's one reason, actually one name, and that is our favorite robot, Mark Zuckerberg. So Mark Zuckerberg announced that Facebook, everyone probably knows that they changed their name to Meta. Whether you think it's a meme or you think it's like they're trying to shake off their bad rep. Basically, Facebook has made this huge shift into the metaverse, and they're investing over like $10 billion specifically into metaverse initiatives. So they're really making this huge push there. Correction mark is lizard. Yeah, agreed. But you can be a robot lizard. So in the next few slides, I will rag on Facebook a little bit, but I do want to say that what their transition into the metaverse is actually quite incredible to observe, because Facebook is this massive company and they are somehow pivoting at this large of a scale. So it's something respectable. Like Facebook stock is down and they lost like a lot of users this quarter, but I think even though I'm going to trash on Facebook for the next several slides, I really respect Mark Zuckerberg for like taking the step towards metaverse, even if it's hurting the company in the short term. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about Meta's metaverse. So what is Facebook or Meta's specific vision for the metaverse? For them, it is strictly VR/AR based, so virtual reality or augmented reality. And this makes sense because Facebook owns Oculus, and they want to make everything virtual reality. So you have to put on the goggles, and then you're now in this space that you interact with people. More importantly, they want to create a closed and centralized metaverse. What this means is a metaverse that is controlled by one company, Meta, and everything is run through that one company. So it's really just a progression of centralized social media apps. And you might be wondering like what exactly defines a centralized metaverse versus the opposite, a decentralized metaverse. And I will explain that specific distinction right now. So zooming out from just Facebook, there are these concepts in computer science of a centralized network versus a decentralized network. And we won't really be talking about distributed networks, but you can imagine they're more similar to decentralized networks. And so a centralized network, imagine each dot is like a user, right? And Facebook is in the center. And every time you want to access Facebook, you send a request to Facebook to get that data. Facebook will send it back to you, and then you display it on your computer. And that's how Facebook works. A decentralized system is where you have multiple computers or multiple nodes in this network that can give you the information and also keep track of the information. And I'll tell you in the next few slides why this is actually the better version of the metaverse. So let me give you some concrete examples so you know what I'm talking about. Basically, a centralized platform, for example, is Facebook, or basically every other social network that exists right now. It's where one company owns the entire platform, and all users of the platform follow the same rules. So you can post on Facebook, you can like things and share in a certain way. On TikTok, the way to post and interact with posts is different. On Snapchat, you send messages, they disappear, things like that. So each platform has their own set of rules that is unique to that platform that they established. And then there's no innate ability to transfer between these platforms because they're their own thing. So, if I wanted to like create a profile on Facebook and then somehow transfer that information over to like Snapchat, that doesn't really happen unless the individual companies integrate and say, we want this transfer to be possible. But on their own, they're just separate entities, and you can't really interact between the different companies, nor will the companies want to, because they want to keep you on their platform. And the last and very important point is that a centralized network, social network, is actually a monopoly, and that's because of network effects. So if you're not familiar with the term network effects, basically it just means once you have a large network of users, it's harder and harder for you to switch platforms, because in order for a social media platform to be successful, you need a lot of users already on it. And if you don't already have users, you can't get more users. So it's kind of a cycle where once you establish a large base of users, it's very, very hard for another platform to establish that same level of users and convince everyone to switch over. So even though you might like hate Facebook or you might hate some of these platforms, but you're still on it because a lot of people are on it, and you're not going to switch over to this like random social media platform where only like 100 people are on it because you don't get the network benefit. So that is what a centralized network looks like. An example of a decentralized network is actually email. So if you think about email, it's kind of a social network in its own way, right? Because you can send messages, you like reply to people, forward things along. But it's not a centralized network. It actually you can use email on many different clients. So some people might use Gmail or Outlook or Apple Mail. If you're edgy and you use Linux, Thunderbird, you know. And so you can use all of these clients and they all talk to each other, and it doesn't really matter which one you use because you'll get the same functionality. Furthermore, there's actually competition between these email clients because anyone can switch at any time. So whereas before with a monopoly, Facebook is not motivated necessarily by users to change, at least not as much, because they know people are staying on Facebook because of their large network. For email clients, if the client sucks, I'm just going to move to somewhere else. And so competition actually drives the innovation in this industry. And so a vast majority of you will probably use Gmail, but that's not because Google is monopolizing email. It's because Gmail actually happens to be a very good email client, and people have made the free choice to switch to Gmail, switching from something like Outlook. No offense to Outlook. Outlook's great too. But in this case, competition will drive the market. So you might be wondering, how is this actually done? How do you create a decentralized network such as email? If every different companies are creating their own clients, well, that's because underlying email, there is a there is a shared protocol. So you might not know this, but there's a protocol called SMTP. It's called Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, and it's what underlies all email messages. And you can think of a shared protocol as basically a shared language. So that's not dependent on any email client. And so say like you're on Gmail and you type up an email and you hit send. Gmail is going to translate that into something that follows the SMTP protocol, and then it will send it to someone else who might be using Apple Mail. And Apple Mail will receive it. Because it's on the same protocol, it'll know how to read this message, and it will display it to you as an email. Now, every email client basically uses the same protocol, and that's how they can communicate with each other. And they're basically essentially integrated with each other because they all share this language. And SMTP protocol, or SMTP, defines things like email addresses, like the email body, whatever data is going in the email body, and functions like CC, BCC, forward, reply. And that's why every email client has all of these features involved. Whereas like every social network doesn't have the same features, right? But email clients do because they're all using this shared language. And so they essentially have all the same functionality. So yeah, email is a very good example of a large, heavily used decentralized network. So with all these benefits in mind, you can imagine as a mental exercise what it would be like to have a centralized system for email. So imagine email was centralized just like social networks are centralized. Well, in that case, every email client will only talk to itself, right? So you can only email, if you're a Gmail user, you can only email other people who use Gmail. Or if you're an Outlook user, you can only email other people who use Outlook. It's essentially the same thing as sending a message over like Messenger or Instagram. And the problem with this, I mean, you can already imagine a lot of problems with this, but one big problem is that you're stuck with email clients and you have the same network effects of social media. So say everyone is on Yahoo Mail, right? Now, if you want to communicate with everyone, you have to use Yahoo Mail. You can't use anything else. And no offense to people who actually still use Yahoo Mail somehow, but Yahoo Mail is not the best email client and doesn't provide all the features. However, they're not motivated to innovate because they don't need to do any work to keep people on their platform. Once everyone is on Yahoo Mail, everyone has to stay on Yahoo Mail in order to use email at all. So Yahoo Mail will be the monopoly, and there is no competition driving innovation. So yeah, that would be a horrible feature. Similarly, the exact same logic will apply to a centralized metaverse. So once you have a centralized metaverse, one company like Facebook can dominate the entire virtual experience. They have complete access to your virtual identity and to define what an identity is online. So they will be the ones to define like what features go into defining your identity, what things you can do with your identity, what possessions you have, like your accessories or your clothing, or if you bought something, Facebook will know, or Meta will know, and they will define what things you can buy online, and also all of your behavioral data. And once this centralized metaverse has been established, you can't get off because everybody's on this metaverse, this version of the metaverse. And even if you think Facebook Meta's version of the metaverse sucks, the features are terrible, or there's a lot of like inequities somehow in the system, you can't move off and you're trapped. So if people have watched the movie, Ready Player One, actually is a very good movie to introduce people to the concept of a metaverse. So for people who haven't seen it, basically everyone in this futuristic world is inhabiting this online metaverse called Oasis, and it's controlled by one company, and the entire movie is about who controls Oasis. And so Facebook creating a centralized metaverse is the bad ending to Ready Player One. It's the ending where the villains win, right? Because if the villains won in Ready Player One, you basically have this giant mega corporation with their own interests controlling the entire space that everyone is kind of living their online lives in. So we don't want Ready Player One, the bad ending, to happen in real life. Now, another key thing about a centralized metaverse is the failure of, oh shoot, sorry. So, okay, everyone can still see my screen, cool. So it's the failure of a centralized system. So remember Facebook outage happened last October, where basically all of Facebook's platforms went down. Actually, if you're curious what actually happened there, I can explain it at the end, maybe, if you're curious about the technical details of that. But suffice to say, they were down for like 5 hours, and I'm sure almost everyone noticed because all your platforms were down. And now imagine this was a metaverse where you have things online, you have like possessions online, you have an identity online. You basically live like part of your life on this metaverse, and it goes down. That is 100 times more jarring than Facebook Messenger crashing. Okay, so that's the bad ending of the story. The good ending is creating an open and decentralized metaverse. So this will function very similar to email. Every metaverse client basically can operate on this one shared protocol, similar to SMTP. And this protocol will define, what it means to have an identity in this metaverse, what it means to have possessions, and what actions and interactions can happen on this metaverse. And everyone can agree on this protocol. And then what this allows is to have interoperability between different metaverse clients. So let's say Gather wanted to create a metaverse client, and then let's say Roblox has a metaverse client, and Facebook has their VR metaverse client. Now, if I like put on a shirt for my avatar in Gather, and then I hop off of Gather and move to Roblox, right? I can retain that same shirt. I can retain any other properties about my identity, and it's as if I just like teleported to a different world. But because everyone's on the same metaverse protocol, what it means to exist in those worlds are all synchronized and integrated. And if I'm on like Roblox and I really don't like it there, or like they shipped some features that I really don't like, or they're doing some sketchy things like selling my data, I can just move to somewhere else. And I can go from the Gather client and interact with other people who are on the Roblox client, just like I can send an email to other people on different clients and still exist in this metaverse together. I can even move from something that's web-based like Gather into a VR client like Facebook, Facebook's metaverse, and somehow we can still talk to each other, and it's because we're on this shared protocol. Lastly, Another benefit is that anyone can build their own metaverse client. So if I thought all the existing ones suck, I can just create my own, plug it into this protocol, and I can start inviting people to my own metaverse client. And if it's really good, there's nothing keeping me from doing that, like there is right now with social networks. Okay. Last thing I kind of want to touch on is the metaverse and blockchain. So, first I can answer some questions. What I have to say to individuals who are against the metaverse idea. So I think there are some arguments about the metaverse. A lot of them center around like, oh, people shouldn't be living their lives online, or at least the ones I've seen have been centered around this argument of like over digitization or over exposure to online things. And I think that's a valid point. That's already a problem with social media, right? Like kids these days, and I'm saying kids because I'm, in college now, I can say that. They're spending too much time on social media, like scrolling through TikTok, or whatever, you kids do these days. That's already a problem with social media. I can't imagine that might be made worse with a metaverse platform. And yeah, I think that's valid. That's one valid criticism that I can see. And so, So that's one valid criticism, and I don't have a perfect response because it's still an ongoing problem that we haven't figured out with social networks either. Yeah, I think the only thing I can say is we should keep that in mind as we develop new technologies for the metaverse. However, it's my personal belief that the benefits of having metaverse platforms heavily outweighs like any negative consequences such as that. It's a great question, and I'm down to keep talking about it later. And then Ronit asked the question, how do different services follow the same protocol in a metaverse system if different services have different elements? Like SMTP for email works because all emails have a body, title, etc. But I can't imagine there would be lots of shared elements in Snapchat and Fortnite, for example. Yeah, it's a great example. So yes, it'll be like orders of magnitude more complex than SMTP. And it will be one of the largest technical challenges, with moving forward with digitization of our world. So yeah, it will be very complex. And the idea is to have a protocol that's robust enough and extensive enough that can support a lot of different things. And not everything has to necessarily be on the protocol. So for example, like different email clients will still implement their own features, right? Like spam filtering for Gmail is really good. I don't know what it's like on other clients, but they probably work differently. And you can star things on Gmail. There's probably a different mechanism for that on other email clients. And those are not shared over the protocol. So basically, individual clients can still implement their own features. It's just that all the information that needs to be shared between clients can exist on this protocol to allow for sharing of data. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay, Matthew asks, do you believe we have the technology to implement the metaverse widely within the near future? If so, how soon would you predict? Yeah, so it's only been basically like a year or less than that since we've been talking about the metaverse. I personally believe that VR and AR technologies are still underdeveloped. So I don't think they are ready. I don't know if people have used Horizon Worlds before. Personally, I think it kind of sucks, like the experience, because everyone's kind of like pixelated and everyone's just kind of blocky. There's a lot of issues with it. So even though VR technology has come very far, I don't think it's good enough yet to adopt like a widely used metaverse platform on VR. That's why, for example, I'm working on Gather, where everything is still web-based. However, I think we'll get there in the next like 5 to 10 years for sure. And I do think they will both develop on the web. So there are people talking about like Web 3.0. You've probably heard that term before if you've been following like blockchain news. And VR, I think both platforms will develop simultaneously to support metaverse ideas. So yeah, I think within like 5 to 10 years is the range where a vast majority of, not a majority, but a vast number of people will be on metaverse platforms, in my opinion. Okay, Wesley asks, is there a way the metaverse can help humans socialize more in person than online? Yeah, so I definitely think, the goal of the metaverse should not be to replace human interaction. That would be a very sad life. I think the goal of the metaverse is to basically shorten the distance between people's interaction to zero. And I don't know about metaverse platforms that will like help you socialize in online or in person. I know, like, for example, Gather, I've been using it, like we use it for our remote work office. That's where we work, is on our own platform. And I've met a lot of people I would normally not have met. And I ended up, meeting up with them in real life because I met them on Gather. I can't think of any specific examples that like where the goal is to help you interact more in person. But that would be a very interesting, project if you had that goal in mind, to create a metaverse platform that helps you interact in person. I don't know what that would look like, but that'd be very cool. All right. Oh, cool. Tobechi, I hope that I'm pronouncing that right, has a question. Can you explain the terms net positive or net zero? I've been hearing them a lot lately. I think it really depends on the context, but generally, I think people mean that there are costs and there are benefits, and net positive just means that overall the benefits are better than the costs are worse. And it's kind of like in a utilitarian sense, if you guys have heard that term, where you say like the benefits will help X amount of people in at X amount of magnitude, and the costs will hurt X amount of people at X amount of magnitude. And it's kind of like an equation that you just put in your mind when you're evaluating certain technologies and their effects. Similarly, net zero is just like when they basically perfectly balance, in which case, it might not be worth doing things that are net zero because they may have a significant benefit, but they also have a huge cost, something like that. Yeah, and so when I say I think the metaverse is a net positive technology, I just mean the benefits, in my opinion, outweigh the costs by a lot. Cool. Just getting back to this last slide, I have like 2 slides left. So metaverse and blockchain. I know a lot of you probably, well, pretty much everyone has heard about the blockchain by now. But if you don't know exactly how it works, I think a very good sentence that I pulled, that I did not write, so I pulled from online, is that blockchain is a means to store digital data in a distributed, transparent, and unalterable way. So most people probably know blockchain from Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. But actually, blockchain is just a technology that's used to store digital data in a way that everyone can see and you can't easily fake or spoof. And that's why you can build things on top of the blockchain that are not just currencies. So, a lot of people probably heard of NFTs. There are also, for example, Decentralized, which I mentioned earlier, is a metaverse platform that's built on the blockchain. So actions that happen in Decentralized are reflected on the blockchain, and people can see kind of your like identity and things that you've done. And another way that blockchain is useful is to define ownership and identity, virtual identity, as I mentioned earlier. Those concepts can be tracked on the blockchain. And so because it's the blockchain is theoretically unalterable, you can basically like own something and make that permanent. And if somebody like wipes the server, you still own that thing because it's reflected on other people's blockchains. I can definitely go more into detail at the end of the slides if people are specifically curious about blockchain technologies. And then I think the image on the right is actually a very interesting thing I ran into like last week, where there's this company that's like selling NFTs of gather spaces. Honestly, it's like kind of a meme. It's kind of fun to like follow. I don't know how big this will go, but they're basically creating spaces in Gather, and they're like selling 120 by 120 pixels of land for like $50 in their Gather space as NFTs. It's pretty interesting stuff. I don't think anyone at Gather expected like something like this to happen, but I think we're encouraging it. Yeah, it's a fun tidbit. So why should you care about the metaverse? Well, it's because the metaverse right now is cutting edge for people my age, in college. But once you guys enter college, everyone here is like 1 to 3 years out from college, right? And once you are in college and like learning about these technologies and actually developing, working on projects and things like that, this will be much more developed and mature, and this will be the landscape of technology that you will be working with. So it's very important, I think, for people your age to at least know what the metaverse is and expect what's coming. And you can even start now, like playing around with these platforms and thinking about it, because I do think this will be very big in the next coming years. So I have listed some examples of things that still need work in the metaverse space. If you are feeling inspired at all, you can like work on them. So creating a metaverse protocol, that's one big thing, right? Working on VR and AR technologies, as I mentioned, I think that's still an underdeveloped field and has a lot of room for improvement. More robust applications of blockchain that are not just cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies tend to dominate, but I think blockchain has a lot of uses outside of it. Better graphics and rendering technology, hopefully to make things look better. That will be a huge component of a metaverse platform. And more digital services. So services that have moved online. That's like more broad, like people starting companies that are purely online, or people starting companies that do things in metaverse spaces. So for example, there are companies specifically sell services to create gather spaces or like decorate gather spaces. That's like a mini economy that Gather has created within itself. Like actual companies, not Gather doing it. So I think that's something cool, and it's an example of that will happen in other metaverse platforms. Okay, that's the end of my slides. So I'm going to just answer questions now. And again, you feel free to ask it in the Q&A section. And it can be any questions, not just about metaverse. It can be like about, I don't know, MIT, I don't know, about Blueprint, anything like that. Cool. All right, Rana asks, is there any way we can get involved in creating, editing applications on the blockchain, not just NFTs and cryptocurrencies, but full applications? Yeah, it's a good question. So creating full applications on the blockchain is pretty technically difficult and complex. A lot of people like struggle with doing it, even having gone through 4 years of computer science education in college. And so I would say the first step is just to understand how blockchain works. I'm sure like there are a lot of resources now online. Nothing I can specifically name is better than just like Googling it, but reading about how the blockchain actually works, the concepts behind like proof of work, proof of stake. And the easiest way, I think, to create a platform or to create a product or create an application on the blockchain is with Ethereum. Ethereum, a lot of blockchain applications use the Ethereum network and Ethereum protocol to do a lot of things. And it's because I think they're most easily extensible and they have a lot of resources online to help you get started. So if you wanted to create a blockchain application, I would look into Ethereum, how their protocol works, and look at examples of people who have done Ethereum projects. Yeah. Anonymous attendee asks, which aspects, use cases of the metaverse do you recommend people who aren't too involved in the space keep their eye on in a monetary sense? Are there opportunities you have identified as especially lucrative? Yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there talking about like how to get rich on metaverse companies. I don't necessarily have like investing advice. I think it's a little too early to say like, oh, this company will like go to the moon, you should go all in on this. I will say there are a few industries and companies that are tangentially related to metaverse that I think they're developing technologies that will be really important in the future. One example is Matterport. So Matterport is a company that's creating software for like scanning 3D spaces. And right now, I think they used it for like real estate. But there are a lot of future applications of this because with a technology like Matterport, you can scan like a physical space, right, and then basically transfer that onto the metaverse. And I feel like that will be a pretty widely used application. So similar companies like that are probably good to keep an eye on. I don't know. I would tell you to invest in Gather once we IPO. But yeah, I think in terms of like where monetary sense, I don't think I have too much specific advice because I think most of the advice out there is not very well informed about companies. So yeah, cool. Oh. Matthew, I'm majoring in mechanical engineering. So do you think that there is a way that my field would intersect with the metaverse? Also, while I'm asking, I have a question for Tony too. Okay. Hey, Tony, we're from FRC team 2554, and we're wondering if you'd be open to hop on a call sometime this week and give us some advice on our design for a robot this year, since you used to be on the first team. Okay, well, I'll let Tony answer that last part of that. It's pretty funny. The first part, mechanical engineering. Yeah, so actually, wait, yes, definitely. And it's because VR, right now, VR technology is heavily limited by its hardware. And so this is more kind of like mechanical, but like more like electrical engineering as well. But one very like big push in the field is to improve VR hardware. I think that's actually like the biggest limiting factor of VR technology. And so if you were going to major in mechanical engineering and you have an interest on the electrical engineering side of that, I would advise like maybe looking into hardware for VR. Like they have those glasses now. Apple, I think, is going to come out with glasses very soon. The field has developed a lot since Google Glasses, like several years ago, but there's still a lot of work to do. So yeah, that's my answer. And then I don't know. I think Tony can answer, or he can like reach out to you individually. But
so the thing is that my school never had enough money for FRC. I actually did the first tech challenge, which is on a much smaller scale, I think, in comparison to the giant FRC robots. But either way, I think it's been too long since I did any robotics. I think I stopped around my sophomore year of high school. So I think if you want really, really good robotics advice, I might not be the person to ask. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I did robotics, but I did bot ball, which is like a competition that barely anyone knows about. And it's definitely not FRC. But if anyone here did bot ball, I would be amazed. Please let me know. I'll be very happy. But I don't think anyone did.
I think my roommate did bot ball.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, do you know what school he's from? It's not related at all. But...
Malden.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
One of Winchester's rivals. Yeah. Yeah, so we're just waiting for more questions. Oh, nice. And also attendee. Why Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp went down? You said that you tell details after slides. Yeah, okay. The technical answer to this is basically there's this protocol called BGP, and I think it stands for like Border Gateway Protocol, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but you can Google it. BGP essentially has to do with domain name servers. So if you're not familiar with what a DNS is, you've probably at least heard the acronym. But essentially, when you visit a website like Facebook.com, what it actually does is you're pointing to a specific computer in Facebook's like server farm that will send you data. And how you translate between Facebook.com and a specific IP address, which identifies a particular computer is using a domain name server. Domain name servers will do that translation for you. And BGP is a protocol that like links a bunch of domain name servers around the world together. Now what happened is someone at Facebook working on the DNS code uploaded some bug where basically the DNS stopped reporting itself over BGP to all the other domain name services in existence. And what that essentially means is no one knows anymore what that translation between facebook.com and a specific IP address is. So when you try to request for facebook.com, it'll keep searching for someone who knows where this IP address is, and it can't find it because they've shut themselves off basically from the rest of the internet. So it's kind of like severing all the connections that Facebook's server farm has with the rest of the internet. And that's what happened. And Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all their servers are in the same place. And so they all went down at the same time. And which is funny also because it turns out like at Facebook's headquarters, they're like card member tapping service, like where they unlock the doors, was also on the same server. So like people couldn't even get into the headquarters at Facebook because those servers were still down. So like I think there was some news about like they had to smash some doors to get to the server to actually diagnose the problem. But yeah, that's a overview, oversimplified a little bit of what happens. Yeah. Yeah, we have 5 minutes left, so we'll just wait out the 5 minutes. If anyone has any questions that they can think of. Yeah, feel free to ask me anything. I am an open book. Oh, I'm looking at the chat now. Looks like somebody asked a question like half an hour ago. Would you say that Meta company has a monopoly? And yeah, I definitely do. I think for sure. I think that's their whole strategy, is to like monopolize a social space, get the network in, and then once you have a large enough network, basically your network just grows, and that's how you monopolize. And like I talked about basically every social network being a centralized company, and that's because it was Facebook that set that precedent at the very beginning, because they were kind of the first major social network to set that kind of example of centralized service. Cool. Anonymous attendee, any advice for high schoolers interested in the metaverse? How do you recommend I get involved? Honestly, I think so. One is just like to keep up with the news about it, but that's a generic answer and kind of boring. I think, to be honest, in order to make like meaningful contributions to like initiatives in the metaverse, you need to like have a good enough technical foundation and skills in computer science. So honestly, for high schoolers, I think the best thing you can do is to work on your technical abilities. So for example, like I think the best way to do that is to work on projects. So if you have an idea, it doesn't matter if the idea is like dumb or like it's already been done. Just working on it gives you you get so much from it. So I would say work on projects, learn new things, specifically work on projects so that you learn new things. And that's really how you just build up that foundation to work on metaverse things. And then once you kind of build that up, really you can work on anything. I mean, all the problems that I mentioned in the last slide are potential open problems you can work on. Yeah, I hope that helped. What inspired you to study CS? It was a lot. It was like in middle school. I think I worked on this is what I talk about. Like I worked on a lot of projects. And I think that's primarily how I learned. I learned way more from doing that than any class I could have ever taken. So like in middle school, I just worked on a project to help, where it was like this glove with an ultrasonic sensor that helps like visually impaired people move around. So it kind of like tells you if there's an obstacle there, and like tells you which direction to move. It was a very simple project. It did not work very well, and I don't think it helped any visually impaired people. But I think that really made me feel CS is something really cool, and you can create a lot of cool things with it. Yeah, so if I'd say anything, just go work on a project. Any idea that you have, work on it. Okay, coming up to the last minute. Anyone has any questions? Get your last questions in. Why Yahoo email service doesn't improve itself? Honestly, I haven't looked at Yahoo Mail in a long time. Maybe it has improved itself. The last time I looked at Yahoo email client was like 2015. So maybe it was an unfair comparison. But I honestly, I think at this point, it's probably because Yahoo Mail doesn't have a lot of users anymore, and it's not a big part of Yahoo's business, and so they don't need to improve it. Whereas like Google probably has a huge team dedicated to Gmail. Yeah, that's probably what it is now, unfortunately. Talking about the glow, that's really cool. Oh, nice. Yeah, that's awesome. I think, oops. Yeah, I think that's awesome that you create something similar. I think it's like, there was like that article in Wired magazine that inspired us. I think that like inspired a lot of similar projects, which is really cool to see. So yeah, shout out to you, good on that. Do you think the metaverse is really the future of communication? Like this is the new era? So not necessarily communication, yes. I think basically like social interaction, it is the future of social interaction. And even if you didn't have this term metaverse, I think everyone will be trending in this direction. It's kind of like how a year ago or like 2 years ago, you would never imagine spending this much time on Zoom or like a video chat platform. And now it's so normalized. Like, I remember I had a meeting with a friend who was like just across campus. And before the pandemic, right, like we would like walk to each other. It take like 5 to 10 minutes. But instead now we just like video call because we can. And through the pandemic, we realized how easy it is to do. I think a similar thing will happen just on extended level. So yeah, I mean, personally, I'm slightly biased, but I do think it is the future. Okay. Cool. I think that's probably time. It's like 10:02. Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening, and hope you guys do well at Blueprint. It should be a really fun event. So good luck, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to talk, Justin. It's pretty cool stuff. And for everyone that's here, tune into the Tech Talks tomorrow and the day after. And good luck on Blueprint.
Cool. See ya. Okay, try to sleep.
Yeah. Thanks for talking, Justin.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Good luck on the organizing. Hope it doesn't crash. There's always like every Blueprint there's always been a crisis on the dev side specifically. Like one of our apps crashed or something.